that good people don't smoke marijuana.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
The medical marijuana. The medical marijuana. Radio show. The medical marijuana for you and me. Ah, yeah, the medical marijuana. Whoa, 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 yeah, the medical. It's the medical marijuana show. You will know.
I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you. Hey, boy, don't feel my world untrue. Yeah, I want to talk to you. My world can be true if you do what I tell you to. I want to talk to you.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Medical Marijuana Radio. This one is for Saturday, the 25th of November, 2017. I'm your host, Larry Love, and we're here every week to bring you information about medical cannabis and recreational cannabis from all over the globe. And all over the globe is what we're going to be talking about today, and all over the United States as well. We have news for you from Florida, California, Denver, Texas, Arkansas, and all over the globe with Michael Krawitz, one of my favorite guests. All I have to do is say, hello, Michael, what have you been doing? And he gets shot out of a cannon. He's the Executive Director of Veterans for Medical Cannabis Access and also a member of the International Association of Cannabis as Medicine. And he travels all over the world to fight for cannabis as medicine, and he fights for veterans here in the United States. And we had like a 3-hour conversation last night, and we have a really great interview with him, and that's Michael Krawitz, and we'll have him in the second part of the show. But first, as always, I've got news for you, and we're going to start off in Florida, where they're having the same problems that come with every new medical cannabis state, okay? Patients waiting months to get their ID cards. This happened here in New Mexico. It happens in other states, but you know what? Some states aren't learning from the mistakes of others. Here's what's happening in Florida.
In the last election, voters overwhelmingly approved providing medical marijuana to sick and dying patients. Almost 50,000 patients are now in the state's medical marijuana user database. Target A senior investigator Steve Andrews found the state is issuing these ID cards necessary to buy the medication at what you might call a snail's pace. And I guess a lot of people want to know why. Why this delay?
Not enough bodies is one reason. For most of this year, only a few full-time employees staffed the Office of Medical Marijuana Use. They were tasked with processing tens of thousands of ID card applications. Now, the man who spearheaded making medical marijuana available to more patients lays the blame on the governor and his dysfunctional government.
What degree of pain am I going to tolerate today?
Janice Michalski has lived in significant pain for 20 years, since doctors removed a tumor from her cervical spine.
I'm in a lot of pain right now.
Janice waited 2 months for the state to process her medical marijuana user ID card.
The patients are the ones that are suffering.
According to Dr. Laura Brown, thousands of sick and dying patients in Florida applied and are waiting for marijuana use ID cards. The bottleneck is at Florida's Office of Medical Marijuana Use, the office charged with writing and implementing rules for medical marijuana.
We have patients with cancer, we have patients with, long-time serious chronic diseases that are desperate to start this new therapy. And it's unfortunate that they're having to wait.
Patients claim the wait is 2 to 3 months, a little different than what the director of the Office of Medical Marijuana Use, Christian Bax, told lawmakers at a recent hearing.
From the time we receive your application, it's 30 days.
And if that guy worked for me, I'd fire him.
Attorney John Morgan spearheaded legalizing medical marijuana in Florida.
In private business, if you had a backlog like this, you'd work at night, you would open up on Saturday, you'd open up on Sunday, you'd get it done.
According to Christian Bax, there are reasons for delays. The state encourages patients to fill out applications online, but it doesn't accept online payments. Patients must send a check. The Department of Health can't mass-produce ID cards. And until October, the Office of Medical Marijuana Use had as few as 3 full-time employees.
If Rick Scott wants to fire him, I'll go up there for free, and I'll bring a whole team of people in. It won't be 8 people, it'll be 30 people, and I'll have the cards all handed out within 14 days.
According to John Morgan, the ID card delay pushes patients to opioids.
Being on the opioids right now, the only way is to go up to keep the pain away.
That lines the pockets of pharmaceutical companies, which contribute heavily to
I'm just going to interrupt for a second there because we went through the same thing here in New Mexico, and the head of the Department of Health, because they weren't turning around the cards fast enough, said that you should go back to your doctor and ask for alternative medicine. Well, the alternative medicine is the cannabis, and to go back on opioids like what's happening in Florida and other places is just despicable. We even had one Department of Health official at one time, another shortage, and tell us, not only a shortage, but also the fact they weren't turning cards around, tell us that we should go back to other sources for our cannabis, like go back to the streets. It's unbelievable. All right, let's finish this up.
Political campaigns. John Morgan blames Governor Scott for tolerating the delay.
How long do you think he would have ever made people wait for the pharmacy at one of his for-profit hospitals?
You think it would have been 90 days?
This is why people despise politicians, because despite of 71% of Florida, the politicians have said, we didn't hear you and you're going to get it when we're good and ready.
Now, both Dr. Brown and John Morgan agree denying patients access to this therapy forces them to either go buy it illegally and break the law or go get opioids. Several patients I've spoken to say it's taken close to 3 months to get their ID cards. Janice Michalski got her ID card October 20th, 8 weeks after she applied for it. It's supposed to be 30 days.
It's supposed to be 30 days. I mean, John Morgan talking tough, saying he can do this in a couple of weeks.
Sure.
You know, I mean, that's bold, but I mean, this 30-day application process, the state's saying, well, we'll do it within 30 days, which is a while, but how many are taking longer than that?
That's a question I asked, and Florida's Department of Health, which runs the Office of Medical Marijuana Use, doesn't keep track of how many applications took longer than 30 days to process, nor would it provide anyone to speak about this on camera. Now, I did call the governor's office for a response about John Morgan's accusation that it's dysfunctional government, and the governor's office referred me to DOH, which of course didn't provide anybody to speak to us to begin with.
So anyway, that's John Morgan. You know, is trying hard to get things going there, and I think he's going to be running for governor if I'm correct. But it's just despicable that a Department of Health would tell us to go back on opioids or to go to the streets to get our cannabis. It's just insane. But that's what happens when we have a party that is really against it, against cannabis, and delay. This is the way they operate. Now, here's something I thought I would never say in my lifetime. Texas medical cannabis now weeks away from Texans suffering from epilepsy. Texas medical cannabis now weeks away. Wow. I never thought I'd see this. Here's this report.
Jason Whiteley takes us where few have ever gone, to 2 Texas dispensaries south of Austin, where marijuana is now legally growing.
We make all of our own sausage here.
Schulenburg is quite proud of its German heritage.
You got pure pork sausage, breakfast sausage.
And almost protective of its newest industry.
If it helps kiddos or it helps people with pain, I'm all for it.
Just west of town on Highway 90, behind chain link and razor wire, is the state's first licensed medical marijuana operation.
I have a daughter that's, she's been diagnosed with epilepsy. She can have 2 or 3 in one day.
2 or 3 seizures in one day?
Mm-hmm.
And the medication doesn't help?
At times.
Izzy Hinojosa hopes that cannabis oil can. Inside these buildings, Knox Medical is squeezing it from marijuana plants.
This place plans to start sending out cannabis oil sometime next month. It will use a fleet of unmarked vehicles, and its drivers, those couriers, will actually have body cameras and deliver those doses directly to patients all across the state. Compassionate Cultivation is a second licensed company in Texas. It's just south of Austin, and they let us inside to see the progress its young plants are already making.
Come and take a look at our facility. This isn't, you know, your second cousin's closet in his dorm room where he's got some lights and growing. I mean, this is a multi-million-dollar facility.
This place named its first strain Click, after Fort Worth Republican Stephanie Click, who got the law passed. Legal plants in Texas have very low levels of THC, the ingredient that makes you high. And only patients suffering from intractable epilepsy with a prescription from a registered doctor can use it.
I've been contacted on a daily basis by parents, by patients, by family members, by doctors that have been waiting in anticipation in Texas for this medication.
These aren't homemade weenies.
Folks at City Market in Schulenburg are too. Medical cannabis stands to help 150,000 Texans. A cure that's a long time coming in a state no longer afraid of this plant's power.
Well,
Jason
that's a
Whiteley,
lie for sure. They are afraid of the plant's power because they're limiting the THC. The THC is the medicine. So I guess it's better than nothing, but it'll evolve. It'll have to evolve because it's a dumbing down of medicine. But congratulations, Texas, for getting this far, because I thought you would be last or never. Going to the first state that legalized for cannabis use for medicinal uses is California, and we've done stories before on this, but it's just too important not to keep updating it. Okay, the California industry insiders warn of fraud at marijuana testing labs, and here is another report about this.
People are raising a red flag, hoping California regulators will take notice and take action. Here's investigative reporter Liz Wagner. Liz.
Jess and Raj, sellers and scientists are warning of potential fraud. They say it calls into question the integrity of the pot testing industry. They're challenging the credibility of some labs already after an NBC Bay Area experiment. As you're about to see, we ran our own tests on marijuana testing labs.
I'm going to pour it into our boiling flask.
Patrick Griffith is getting ready to open up shop.
A water bath.
Inside his new LA digs.
We'll secure the flask.
He's turning pot.
Start that vacuum.
Into potent oil for vaping cartridges and edibles.
And that will be the final product that we put on our shelves.
The extract is rich in THC, the stuff that gets you high. The more THC marijuana has, the more it's worth. So Griffith admits he's fudged the numbers with the help of some pot testing labs.
Were you putting products out at a certain THC percentage, knowing that it actually wasn't that percentage?
Yeah.
He says it's the only way to compete. He's revealing this dirty secret, hoping things will change.
If we're not happy with the numbers we're getting from one lab, we'll go to another, we'll explain our situation, and we'll get our numbers.
Isn't that lying? Is it fraud?
Yeah, that would be lying and fraud.
Several states already require sellers to test their pot for THC potency, along with pesticides and mold, to make sure it's safe and labeled correctly. Like sellers, labs also stand to make a lot of money. And Griffith says some are boosting numbers to boost business.
The problem is that these testing companies rely totally on marijuana income. So if you're not happy and you leave, then where else are they going to get business from?
We're using this in conjunction with another technology.
Dr. Donald Land and Reggie Godino say their company has been asked to inflate its findings. They're scientists at Steep Hill Labs, one of the nation's largest cannabis testing companies, with one location here in Berkeley.
In almost every state that we operate in, we have had someone approach us and say, hey, what would it take to get these numbers changed?
His response to sellers is to go find another lab. And apparently they did. An independent scientist in Washington analyzed test data and found labs that returned the highest THC numbers got more business. The state later suspended 3 labs for inaccuracies.
We have a lab in Alaska. We have a lab in Albuquerque, and both of those markets now. We also are seeing labs coming in, not failing people, and elevating potency levels and grabbing market share.
Do you fear that will happen here in California?
It will absolutely happen here in California. It's a way to make more money.
New state regulations will force labs to show they have proper equipment and quality controls, but they can't all come into compliance overnight. We decided to test them ourselves to see how far they have to go.
We'll weigh them out to 1 gram.
With help from Griffith, we ran an experiment to see how labs gauge THC potency in his pot. First, he mixed this batch of marijuana extract, poured uniform samples, and packaged them up. Then our producer hand-delivered the samples to labs across the state.
1 down, 9 to go.
We drove from the Bay Area to San Diego and back, hitting 10 different labs. The first result came back with a THC level of 66%, the next 80%. And here are the rest. Remember, the samples came from the same batch of extract. Scientists say some variation is normal, but the results ended up ranging from 64 to 83%, nearly a 20-point spread.
When would the numbers be so off that your alarm bells start ringing?
Around 8 to 10%, I'm really starting to get concerned.
Soon, lab testing will be mandatory, and the scientists at Steep Hill say right now, sellers are sending their own samples to labs to figure out who they want to work with.
Are they lab shopping?
Absolutely, they are.
We are on track to be in a good place to regulate the testing laboratories.
Lori Ajax is chief of California's Bureau of Cannabis Control. At Thursday's first ever cannabis advisory meeting, she told us the Bureau plans to audit labs to make sure they're returning accurate data. And she's confident the state can independently verify THC results.
So we'll have the ability to pull samples and then do testing with a contracted lab through the state of California.
Has that lab been selected yet?
It has not, no.
Ajax says the Bureau hopes to figure that out in a few months. But sellers and scientists warn strong oversight of a budding test industry can't happen soon enough.
Everybody knows already there are going to be some bad actor labs that are going to cheat, and I think the mechanisms will be there to catch them. Hopefully they can get implemented quickly.
We should note, as part of our experiment, we found labs gave different test results for the same product. The extract maker down in LA you heard from also sent samples from the same batch of oil to the labs we visited. To see his results and how they differ from ours, head to our website, NBCBayArea.com.
Anyway, it's going to happen all over. It's going to happen in every state. There's an amount of greed by people in this industry that is just intolerable, especially when it comes to the health of people and the fact that people, especially medical patients, just they don't have a lot of money for this medicine. And yes, you did hear that they said it's probably happening in Albuquerque here in New Mexico. So not a nice thing. On the better side of things, when states legalize for adult use, the first go round, there's no place for the public to go and smoke, like if you're traveling to Denver or Washington or Portland and so forth. But now they're starting to allow pot, marijuana, cannabis in bars and restaurants under certain conditions. Here's this report from Denver.
This is the news about a marijuana in Colorado and the passage of that ballot initiative that allows smoking and eating pot in certain bars and restaurants in Denver. Initiative 300 officially passed last night, nearly a week after the election. With 53% of the vote, businesses will need to get neighborhood approval and apply for a permit through the city. Now, supporters of the measure say restrictions will help keep the public safe.
We have millions of people visiting the state of Colorado, many of them trying cannabis, nowhere to go. And I also think it's important that they have somewhere to go where staff is trained because we want to promote responsible use.
Denver is the first city in the country to pass an initiative like this. Patrons have to bring their own weed.
Bring your own weed, pot clubs happening soon in Denver. All right, we'll be right back with my buddy, Michael Krawitz, fellow New Jerseyan, fellow advocate, although he's really an activist. This guy travels all over the globe. He went to a big international convention and where CBD was a big topic, and we're going to talk about the drug war and prohibition. So we'll be right back with Michael Krawitz after this.
It's all about the 420 MMJ Radio.
this is Grace from Organica. You're listening to Medical Marijuana Radio. Did I do it?
Yes, you did it, Grace. Thank you, Grace from Organica. Okay, we're going to... I'm going to play Michael Krawitz's interview last night. We talked for 3 hours. The interview is about 40 minutes, and we talk about some really great stuff. If you want to educate your brain and yourself about cannabis all over the globe and what's happening, is CBD legal? Very interesting conversation, and here is Michael. And we're back, and once again, I'm really happy to welcome Michael Krawitz to our Medical Marijuana Radio Show. Michael is a veteran. He fights for veterans. He travels all over the world to fight for veterans and cannabis and all kinds of other things. So welcome again, Michael Krawitz. What have you been up to?
Oh, thanks. Thanks for having me, man. It's great to be back. I've been busy.
You haven't been traveling anywhere, have you? Have you traveled to Europe or anything recently?
Oh gosh, before I even get to that, I think at least as well in chronological order as well. I'm really proud to say that we finally got the governor of Colorado to sign a bill to allow post-traumatic stress to be a qualifying condition under the state medical marijuana law. And it's really crazy. Colorado, where we've already had legalization for a couple of years already under our belt, still fighting to add a qualifying condition, but we did get it passed after like a 7-year fight with just about every prominent activist in Colorado joining it at one point or another. It was that long of a extended battle.
It's quite...
And also,
I was just going to say, it's unusual, though, for Colorado, who's been ahead of everyone, to be so latent with coming around to PTSD. New Mexico, I believe, was the first medical cannabis state to put PTSD on before anybody.
Well, New Mexico is what we based our work on. The fact that we had New Mexico was working, it was good results. I don't think we had anything published yet, but we had preliminary data that was about to be published that Brian Crum was working on. And that, together with the Sesame trial up in Canada and all the work out of Israel and other places with this cannabinoid receptor system and the memory eraser function that Dr. Mashulin was teaching us about, all that together made us feel comfortable to go out nationally and say, hey, if your state has a medical marijuana program, you should have post-traumatic stress as a qualifying condition. And if you're a veteran or a patient out there who's suffering with post-traumatic stress, that you should consider cannabis to be a potential treatment option, what they call palliative care. It helps with the symptomatic relief of the post-traumatic stress. Gosh, since then, we've gone from New Mexico and, of course, California to now just a couple of states that don't. So we've got 26 more states that we've added, for a total of 28 states out of the 30 modern medical marijuana states that have post-traumatic stress as a qualifying.
I know you traveled to New York and you did a big panel there, right? And Cuomo finally came around, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was really awesome. I went up there with the Marijuana Policy Project and Drug Policy Alliance, both working with us, and went and was received by the legislature. Actually got to greet everyone on the floor of the Senate. Was announced on the floor of the Senate. It was a pretty big honor, very unexpected. Met with a lot of representatives and did some press, did TV interviews, and hopefully that helped. I mean, we got it passed. The governor signed it, so you never know what part your contribution played, but I definitely was part of the winning team.
Well, congratulations on that. It's going to really help a lot of people. I just wonder why Cuomo, who is pretty liberal normally, they have such a lowbrow medical program there, so to speak.
Well, as far as post-traumatic stress, I can explain that at least. It's a little hard to explain each state and their foibles, but the resistance that we faced with post-traumatic stress was pretty consistent in all the states, and it came from the American Psychiatric Association specifically, and where they had a stronghold, where they had very, very strong leadership, individual members that were very high-ranking or whatever. Like in New Mexico, like in Colorado, like up in Washington State, like in New Jersey, New York, Maryland, these places, they put up a pretty good fight. And it was always very hypothetical. There was no psychiatrists coming in and saying, well, in my clinical practice, we experience this or that. No, it was more, hey, cannabis is a drug of abuse. And why on earth would you give a drug of abuse to someone who might be prone to drug abuse? And, that's actually an argument that you don't have to even make to a veteran. Veterans are very sensitive and very aware of our substance abuse issues, and we're trying to deal with those. And we're very, respectful and appreciative of psychiatrists when they try to help us with that.
But they
don't
really
lecture us about that when we're trying to, talk about medicine, and we're trying to give this evidence about medicinal use to the psychiatrists, and they just are like a parrot, just constantly giving us back that same speech about abuse. It starts really wearing on our nerves.
Yeah, they actually sent a psychiatrist from New Mexico to petition to take PTSD off of our
Right, that was
condition
what I was
list.
alluding to, Dr. Ungerweiler.
Owelling, I think, was the guy's name here in
Or
New Mexico.
Owelling, I can never say.
I think it was Dr. Owelling. Yeah, I had him on my show
Owelling.
once too, and
Yeah, you did a whole episode interview with him. That was really awesome.
Oh,
I
thank
really
you, man.
congratulate you on the
man.
effort and on engaging him. That was fantastic.
And we also got like 400 people to come down to the DOH when they just shut them down and
Well, that was very useful for me on a national scale, because here was a test. It was a real test. Dr. Orwilling, he put up enough of a petition to remove post-traumatic stress. He did enough of an effort so that it would have flushed out any negative, experiences that existed. Certainly would have come to the surface.
Well,
all there was, if you remember, all there was his hypothetical situation.
yeah, but he was put up to it by the medical board.
But no, I don't think so.
No,
If I remember-
wait. He was put up to it by the medical board that supervises all the doctors in New Mexico.
Really?
Yes, he was put up to do that. And of course, my point of view from watching this over the last 5 or 6 years is that the psychiatry community has been one of our biggest enemies for the last 5 years.
What I was going to say, I thought you were going to say that he was put up to it by the Psychiatric Association, but
that too,
in fact,
I think.
I think he was writing a white paper that they were considering adopting. So it was actually his idea, but I didn't know that the board had actually put him up to it. That's amazing, because he didn't get a very warm response from the commissioners, who really felt like he was wasting their time once they figured out that it was a hypothetical situation that he was putting in front of them.
Yeah, but you know what? I think that most psychiatrists feel threatened by the fact that cannabis works so well for PTSD, and people aren't going to come
I
and
don't
see
think
them.
that's what it is.
Really?
I think that they spend their, one of their day jobs is drug abuse treatment, and drug abuse treatment is working directly with the government, and it's a non-medical thing. You have to realize that if you go and you get methadone as a pain patient, you can go ahead and get a prescription, whatever, it's a regular medicine. But if you go get methadone as a drug abuse treatment, it's no longer under the same rules as medicine. It's got all kinds of special rules. Check it out.
Absolutely will. Now let's talk about the opioid crisis and cannabis, because it's really, really important. In New Jersey, our home state, you know that Governor Christie, who's got just minutes left to his reign of terror, is totally against cannabis, and Trump has put him in charge of some kind of opioid.
I've been tracking. There's a bunch I could say about it, but the main thing I'll say about this whole thing is that they're walking on well-trodden earth. I did an expose on methadone back years ago. It's one of I'm more proud of pieces that I've written. And I really went into the history of methadone and tried to understand it. And vicariously through that process, I learned that there was a bunch of efforts over the years, over 100 years, to come up with drugs that were non-addicting. And each and every time they came up with another version of heroin or another version of morphine that was actually more problematic than the last. And now they're even, it's even worse that they're trying to, monitor the hell out of patients or test the hell out of them, to somehow get a finger on pain, right. Something that they've never been able to do before. All of a sudden they're going to be able to do it now. And what is that going to mean? So you can get an indicator, you put a meter to their head and it gives you a number 4. Okay. So now you think that's not going to be without problems? It's like they're so blind to the reality of the sausage effect that they have. The unintended consequences of their actions. They just seem to blindly go into things. And we know certain things. We know, for example, that if you throw cannabis at a population of pain patients, they'll use less opiates and less of them will die from opiate overdose.
Absolutely.
But they consider that? No.
There's actually a study, I hope you've read it. There's a Dr. V. Hill at UNM that just came out with a study in regard to all this. Do you know about that one?
Not particularly.
I'm going to try to get a hold of it and I'll send it to you. But there's studies being done all over the place, and sometimes they're just misinterpreted, and people get...
Well, the Journal of the American Medical Association was where you'll find the article about a significant reduction in opiate overdose deaths associated with cannabis use.
Right. They say states that have illegal cannabis, whether it's for medical or recreational, and most of them are both, but have 25% less.
And you know what? I talked to Dr. Volkow. She's the head of our National Institutes of Drug Abuse about that. You know what she said?
What did she say? Because
she dismissed it. She dismissed it. I was like, what do you mean? And she said, well, that's not a decrease in the rate of opiate overdose. It's a decrease in the rate of increase.
Wait.
Reduction in the rate of overdose.
So did she misinterpret that?
I don't care if she did or not. I looked at her incredulously. That's not good. So you're slowing down the freight train instead of stopping it. That's not good.
Okay, good. What a great retort you had. Congratulations on getting that out so quickly to her.
Well, it amazed me that she was doing that. She almost felt threatened by me because I really laid into her. But I told her, I'm here as a envoy of the cannabis movement, and we don't get a lot of FaceTime with you. And I want you to know that we're not very happy with you.
But how can she deny science? How can she deny the science?
She does, and she ticked off. I said, it's not helpful what you do with medical cannabis research, and she ticked off all these studies that she was supporting, that NIDA was supporting, but they're all studies that very carefully avoid making any of the arguments that we need to be making.
Well, the hypocrisy is that there are, dronabinol and marinol and all these other synthetic that is allowed, but the natural plant isn't. I mean, that's like the biggest hypocrisy involved in what's going on medicinally with this plant.
Well, they'll support research when it's in sort of in an abstract nature. If you want to look at cannabis head on, you say, oh, I want to study whole cannabis to see if it's useful for this or that. That's when you start running into problems. If you got a state to back you, like when California did it with the California Medical Cannabis Research Group, then they had a little bit less problems. They were able to study it and they got positive results. But it's tough. The Dr. Sisley and MAPS have been trying to get whole cannabis through the FDA approval process. They're really facing, in some ways, less resistance studying ecstasy than studying cannabis.
Ecstasy should be studied too, probably.
Well, absolutely, but you certainly would see no rational reason why it would be easier to study ecstasy than cannabis.
Yeah, well, that's because they're all in the pockets of the pharmaceutical companies, and who's going to make ecstasy if they find that it's going to be medicinal?
Yeah, well, that sounds good, but the reality of it is that cannabis has a history, and to appease that history, they create extra hoops. And for cannabis to do research at the federal level, you have to go through a NIDA special panel that you don't have to go through for other drugs, but just for cannabis. And it's funny, when the Controlled Substances Act was created in 1970, whatever, they grandfathered in a lot of the aspects of the Marijuana Tax Act when it came to marijuana, with the proviso that they would do a study and figure out, how they should actually place it and change it. And of course, the history is clear. Everyone knows Nixon refused to accept those recommendations, and it never did get changed. And we're stuck with, this kind of bait and switch, if you will.
How about millions of people have suffered and died because of that?
But the point being, and I agree with you, but the point being, it's like status quo. A lot of this is just because it was that way.
Yeah, I get you. So let's just move. You just traveled to the World Health Organization meeting like a month ago or so, and CBD was the big topic there. So can you enlighten us on what happened in regard to that?
Yeah, it's amazing. It is almost a month. It's the 6th of November, I think, was our hearing. It's the Expert Committee on Drug Dependence at the World Health Organization. And I think a little bit of background is important because you have to understand, first of all, for those who've been following history and listening to all our diatribes about Harry Anslinger, we don't talk about much about it, but way after the Marijuana Tax Act, he became Ambassador Anslinger and helped shove the Marijuana Tax Act type crap down the throat of the rest of the world with the treaty system. It's a single convention on narcotic drugs. That treaty system is really the basis for a lot of our law in the United States. When they created that Controlled Substances Act, they wove that treaty through our law. It's actually, if anybody's followed the ball and has seen, where the tire meets the road and we've fought against the DEA in court here or there, they bring up the treaty. They use the treaty very often as a defense to support their drug war. And this treaty is written in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and is completely outdated, especially with the marijuana part from the 60s, which actually even goes back further than that. We found out that the evidentiary process that they did for cannabis was in the 1930s, 1935 to be exact. And that was just grandfathered in. They never did a new process. In 1962, when they created the treaty, they just adopted the, there was nothing really new at that point. They hadn't even discovered THC yet. That was just a little bit later in the 60s. So, they really had no idea what they were doing. In the treaty, it sort of says, under cannabis, it says, see poppy. Go look at how we handle poppy. That's how you should.
Wow, how interesting is that?
And the treaty has, like two different ways that kind of the treaty can be changed. One is the direct uphill route, which is, to try to actually change the treaty, to amend the treaty, have a country or a group of countries go in and try to, and why that's straight uphill is because if a country goes in and tries to amend the treaty, they have to get all the other countries to agree, complete consensus before they can move forward. So that's, you can imagine it's almost impossible to get consensus with countries like Russia and China and others that are cheerleaders for the current dogma. But the World Health Organization has this responsibility, much stronger role in the UN treaty system than like our NIH is in our government. The World Health Organization is much more independent, and they do an evidentiary review of a substance. They make recommendations, and those recommendations don't need consensus. They just need a majority vote to get passed. So that's why I've been working in the World Health Organization. Number one, because I realize and I have faith that a modern evaluation of cannabis would result in a minimum of some very strong recommendations to change the treaty. And that when the World Health Organization makes these recommendations, it's a lot stronger than if a single country makes it. And we might actually even get it done at the world level of the UN World Drugs Control Program Commission, might actually be able to get it voted in because, again, it just needs a majority vote and not full consensus. So,
right. So there was a. I'm sorry to interrupt, Mike. There was a.
We've got a process now, and it's underway. We'll talk more about that, in a second. But that's what we've got. It's something that we've been working on for like 7 years to get going. We've just finally got it going.
So CBD was a big topic at this particular meeting this year, right?
Yeah. This is
how are other countries?
The tip of the iceberg of this process. And the first thing to surface was CBD.
So how are other countries currently handling CBD?
We had testimony. It was really interesting. We had, I think, 6 people total that spoke. There was like 3 people spoke on tramadol. There's like 12 different substances that the WHO is considering in this meeting. Only one aspect of cannabis, and that was CBD. In this meeting. The next meeting next year will consider the rest of the issues, whole cannabis, cannabis extract, THC, whatever. But this time it was just CBD and tramadol and some analogs of fentanyl and a bunch of stuff that didn't seem interesting to our reform movement anyway. But tramadol got a few people testifying. Very interesting testimony. I can talk about that if you want. But we had like 6 people that testified about CBD, all of them positive, all of them saying essentially the same thing, that CBD should not be the subject of control, should not be scheduled in any way in the treaty, and that the use of it out there in the world was not a problem at all, and seemed to have a whole lot of benefits.
Who else went to talk on CBD?
And what I was going to say, in direct answer to your question, we had I always forget his name now.
Okay, you can get back to it if it comes to
No, but I don't need his name. It's his organization is called For Grace. For Grace. I can't think of his name right off the top of my head. But anyway, a fellow from Mexico, and it was great because he could not only talk about the legal access now through the government of Mexico, that the program that they're setting up down there, that people are accessing cannabis CBD extracts, but also he kind of talked about his daughter Grace, and that's what brings him into this, is looking for a solution for epilepsy, like so many of our cannabis moms here in the U.S. That have come to speak about these issues. So that was really I thought a very important aspect. But we also had Boris from the European hemp industry, the Industrial Hemp Industry Association. And it was great because Europe has a very progressive and very well-developed access program of CBD officially through official channels for medicine, very well-controlled, high-quality products. And he was able to talk about that and talk about it from the hemp industry perspective. And so there you go. It was like Europe, Germany, Mexico. The United States is the most schizophrenic, I think, with how we handle it, where it's essentially handled three different ways. You can get it as a food supplement through a hemp, food kind of track. Then you can get it through a medical marijuana program as a medical marijuana product. And then, of course, you can get it, as a
free for open market.
Open market.
Little cannabis, excuse me, CBD boutiques and online and all that stuff.
Right.
So, but here in the United States, doesn't the Agricultural Act have like CBD would be legal, and that it is okay to cross state lines? What is your feeling about that? How CBD relates to our Agricultural Act? Is there something in there that defines things?
Well, CBD is fascinating, and I've been trying to get a beat on it. There's a considerable amount of back and forth in the legal minds in the U.S. about what exactly the status of CBD is inside the U.S. It's clearly legal and illegal, and it kind of reminds me of the head shop thing. Where you can go into a head shop and you can buy a bong and you take it home and smoke your weed in it, as long as you don't call it a bong or call the shop a head shop, right?
Exactly, smoke shop they call them.
Yeah. It has to be a tobacco pipe. Can't call it a bong, right? So, but it's kind of like that. If you have a CBD product and you call it a medical marijuana product and you're selling it over the internet or selling it in some way, advertising it, the FDA will probably come after you. To make a medical claim or to sell something as a medicine openly and legally, you're supposed to have to go through a process and either sell it as a nutraceutical or sell it as a FDA approved medicine. But in either way, you have to back up those medical claims and you have to pass through certain regulatory channels. And the minute you start talking about CBD as anything other than a food supplement aspect of hemp, you start digging into the illegal aspect of marijuana, because hemp is legal, and hemp is sold as a food, it's sold as a cosmetics, it's sold as 1,000 different ways. But one way it's not sold is as a medicine.
And that's why the FDA sent out letters a couple weeks ago to certain companies.
Much. Yeah. So, but that's kind of the line in the sand. If you're going to sell it as a hemp food supplement and make no claims, I think you're probably okay. It doesn't seem like there's problems. But the minute you start selling it as some sort of any way that can be tangentially connected to cannabis, and it was interesting. I spoke to the World Health Organization and told them that I thought it was a very significant moment, because this was the first time the hemp movement had ever shown up at the UN. The hemp is exempt under the tree specifically. So this was really kind of a unique and first time thing that the hemp movement felt the need to show up and to speak out at the UN level.
Do you think they were just trying to keep it on the down low until they had to?
Well, it's funny. I remember back when cannabis, there was one movement, and the hempsters were saying, "Hey, we're talking about industrial issues. We're talking to farmers. We're talking about fiber and fuel and oil and really the medicinal and drug aspects of this discussion are negligent. Why don't we just separate this completely from marijuana? You guys talk about the drug aspects of the plant. We'll talk about the industrial aspects of the plant."
There's so much CBD out there now that if you've seen some of the reports that don't live up to what they're saying on the
that's what I basically told the World Health Organization expert committee, that this was something that was owned by the world, that we own it, that B, it wasn't some new novel thing that was created in a laboratory. Actually, it was something that was discovered in the 1940s, and it was our wizards of our cannabis culture that figured out how to cultivate cultivars that were rich in this CBD, and that's the basis for which you've got some products now in the pipeline to be FDA approved. I didn't specifically mention GW, but that's kind of what I was thinking of.
But there are products out there that don't have the amount of CBD in it that it's supposed to.
But to get to that, what I was going to say is that I emphasize that what we actually need is a little bit of help, maybe in quality control, and making sure that we get a product,
good clean product. Absolutely.
Exactly. We don't need. It's not a drug per se that we need to control for safety of abuse. It's more something that we just it wouldn't be. It's really, to me, it's amazing, because the only problems you really have with hemp and hemp products and CBD is its affiliation to cannabis. If it had no affiliation to cannabis, we wouldn't be talking about it. We wouldn't have these discussions.
Right. Well, it's the same family, and that's why people get confused. I mean, I saw something on Facebook the other day where somebody was asking, is CBD from marijuana the same as CBD from the hemp plant? I mean, it's the same. CBD is CBD. Okay, it's a molecule. The molecule is the same. So the thing about the industrial hemp, of course, is that you can get 70% CBD out of. You can get more CBD out of hemp. That's the point. And
my concern has always been that if you're growing, well, first of all, I've always felt like if you're going to be using a CBD product, the best luck right now I think you'd have would be with a product from a medical marijuana program, because that's at least, you got to go through some regulatory hurdles if it's a good medical marijuana program. And the reason why I like that is because what I figured was, if you're growing hemp for an industrial application and you're able to divert the CBD, I'm not so sure about their growing practices, the kind of soil, the kind of fertilizers you can use. The rules may be different for an industrial crop than for a food or a medicine crop. So if you're going to cross over and start making an extract, which will actually even make any pesticides or problems that you have in your plant be emphasized in the product, that can be a problem. And sure enough, when the guys from Project CBD rather, when they did their expose, they found a lot of problems with that, with adulterants, but also like you said, just having a product that didn't even have CBD in it. Which right. Well, CBD is such a modest effect on you anyway. You wouldn't even know if it wasn't there.
Well, it's funny because I'm a THC guy. I don't have the kind of pain, knock wood, that or CBD would help. So it's like I did a little experiment. I got some CBD oil. It was 70% CBD, oil, just like our hash oil looks like, and it had like 2.7, just under 3% THC. So I took a small capsule once, and I really didn't feel anything. And then I decided, well, you know what? I want to see what this is all about. And I took a capsule that I made for myself that had 700, about 600 milligrams of CBD, and about a little under 200 milligrams of THC. And I took that, and I slept well. I did not get any kind of a THC high, even with 200 milligrams of THC in that. The CBD just really counteracts that psychotropic tropic effect, and I slept really well. It was calming, but I just wanted to take a strong one just to see how the THC thing is, and I think that
we might very smartly use CBD in the future as some sort of a rescue drug for someone who's having an anxiety attack from too much THC.
They're already doing that. I had a guy on my show a couple of years ago who has a rescue drink with CBD and other things in it that is a rescue drug. As a matter of fact, I'm surprised there's not more products out there right now, but I do believe CBD will be the main thing to rescue people from a THC bad experience, is what I like to call it.
But here, I got to tell you something. I want to give you the full picture here. It's not very long either, just to give you a real full understanding of what exactly is going on at the UN and this World Health Organization stuff.
Thank you.
Back around 2007, I think it was, Azerbaijan and Japan went to the World Drug Body with a resolution on cannabis seeds. And Japan was the one doing most of the talking, and they were complaining a blue streak about their kids in their country going on the internet and buying seeds, what they called high-potency cannabis seeds, probably like Mark Emery from Canada or something, right? And they're complaining a blue streak about this, and they thought this was a minor thing. Let's, clamp down on this sale of seeds. What they didn't realize is in the treaty, seeds are exempt. So what they were asking for was major, but they didn't realize it, I don't think, at the time. And they passed this resolution to look into cannabis seeds, but what it really equated to was a review of cannabis, to reassess how we look at cannabis at the international level. Like I said, I really don't think Japan and Azerbaijan realized, or really the Commission on Narcotic Drugs that voted this thing in, really realized at the time the full extent of what this meant. And then since 2007, the International Narcotics Control Board, which is a overseeing kind of body inside the self-governing body inside this drug control program, also agreed and asked the World Health Organization to review cannabis and look into cannabis and reassess cannabis. So the WHO opens up this box, cannabis, and decide, let's break it up into subcategories. We'll look at cannabis itself, whole cannabis and resin, which would be like hashish, I guess, and then extracts and tinctures, and then THC, and then THC copies, and then CBD. And I think they put CBD on the stack for a couple reasons. One, because there's products out there all over the fucking place, excuse my French, CBD products. And number two, that there's actual pipeline products, a couple of them now, that are working through the regulatory schema to be officially accepted as a medicine. So I think that, is a legitimate reason why they would put CBD on the docket, so to speak. So I just want people to understand, this isn't some country gunning for CBD. This is a byproduct of actually, I think, a very good, natural, internal process of reflection of how cannabis is handled in the treaty. And certainly as a constituent of cannabis, CBD is already there. It's not listed anywhere. It's not specifically written anywhere. But again, in cannabis, you'll find CBD. So it's sort of by proxy already stuck in the treaty.
So how did you, when you walked away from the WHO meeting, what did you come back with, so to speak? What do you think everybody got out of it?
I feel like they're generally receptive to this idea, and I think there's a pretty good chance that they'll make a stand that CBD should not be scheduled. And I think if they did that, it'd be fantastic, because the Commission on Narcotic Drugs, they can change the policy, but they can't come up with the recommendations of the World Health Organization. So if they want something to vote on, they can only vote on what the World Health Organization gives them to vote on. So if the World Health Organization doesn't give them anything, they just say, well, we looked at CBD and we don't think it should be anything done with it. There's nothing to vote on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. So let me, before we wrap up, I just want to, both of you and I are from New Jersey, and we're having a change of governorship there. Do you think that the new governor will be able to legalize for rec and fix that medical program quick?
It's amazing the amount of positive kind of feelings after this election. It's funny. I read this thing that Kevin Sabet put out, talking about how it was doom and gloom for the marijuana movement because we didn't legalize anything in 2017. But heck, a couple of governors, not just that governor, talked about legalizing marijuana if they should get elected, and they did. We lost in Virginia one of our oldest drug warriors, the guy who tried to repeal our old medical marijuana law and failed, not once, not twice, but like 3 times. He's just a menace to medical marijuana, to the marijuana movement, and he got beat by a Democrat, I think, a Democrat who's LGBT.
LGBTQ, all those letters.
Yeah,
he
yeah.
supports that.
Yeah. So wonderful. I mean, you're talking about somebody who's been the staunch opponent of any kind of tolerance or almost the thumb of religious oppression in the state, getting beat by someone who represents the very opposite of his position. It's kind of poetic, I thought.
Yeah, I think it's going to, according to what I've read, the new governor of New Jersey is going to try to do heavy stuff in the cannabis industry in the first 100 days. It's one of his running points when he was running.
Well, so. I think that states that get involved very quickly in marijuana will see a windfall, and states that don't won't, to a certain extent, because what will happen when cannabis is fully legalized across the board, the prices will come down. And right now, the prices are still essentially set by the black market, which gives you this huge range of space to not only make a profit in the cannabis industry, but also bring in a huge amount of tax revenue and state revenue. There's places that charge $1 million a license, get 50 different entities put in a license application, and don't even guarantee they'll be a winner.
Yeah, I know. The system is convoluted right now, and it's not easy to get licensed, and people getting licensed for no reason at all. I just want while we were talking about price,
the kind of money that these states are bringing in if they get involved now,
you just mentioned the prices, and we didn't get to mention that. I just want to say that my personal feeling is that most of the prices on CBD out on the internet and at some of these stores are way overpriced for the amount of percentage of CBD that you get. It's really quite uncomfortable for me to see people gouging the CBD prices right now.
Well, I've talked to a couple of people out there in the world who've talked a little bit about that, and I couldn't begin to give you their complete perspective, but they did make an argument in defense of the prices, that the types of plants that they're working with out in the medical marijuana world, at least, that are CBD producing, are kind of finicky. They're not, they're hard to grow. They don't produce a lot. There's a lot of different things about it that seem to make it lean towards a little bit higher price.
I'm really talking about the industrial hemp CBD, coming from that plant. They can really get lots of CBD out of that plant, and I just think they're gouging right now, and it bothers me.
It's hard to say. The founder of one of these big hemp, was it Medical Marijuana Inc. or
yes, they're the Canaway people too, aren't they? Or there's
what you read about the fellow that wrapped his Lamborghini?
I did. Yes.
Pole?
Yeah, that was.
So that's some of the CBD money, in his Lamborghini that he's driving 150 miles an hour down the main drag.
Yeah, that came from sick people.
Came from
karma's a bitch, and
karma's a bitch.
And it's coming around, people out there that are not doing the right thing for sick people. Michael, I want to thank you. Is there any, if I say, is there any final words, we're going to go for another 20 minutes, but where can people look at what you write and contact you if you'd like?
Well, heck, I will give you a final word, because I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that next month, if this comes out in the month of November, next month, December, there'll be the Emerald Cup out in California. I'm going to be out there with a veterans panel, and that's looking really interesting. And then we're going to be following up this World Health Organization. Whatever recommendation they make on CBD, we'll know really soon, and then we're going to either support it or oppose it at the March meetings of the UN Drug Program back in Vienna, Austria. So I'll be back in Vienna again in Austria in March. And then the rest of cannabis will be reviewed in May of this year, of this upcoming year. And then that next March will be when the proverbial you-know-what will hit the fan, when we'll have the full slate of recommendations on cannabis to, again, either support or oppose at the World Drug Program.
Well,
and
I got to say, I really admire you and what you have done. I mean, you've dedicated at least the last bunch of years, not only to our country when you were a veteran, but now helping veterans, helping them get well, and fighting for this plant. And it's just greatly appreciated by all of us out here, Michael. And I admire you for doing that, and I think I have some admiration for your frequent flyer mileage.
Yeah, I appreciate that. But last thing, I guess, where you can find more information about Veterans for Medical Cannabis Access, kind of follow what we do, even the international stuff when it's relevant, is on the Facebook page that we have. It's Facebook/USA.VMCA, Veterans for Medical Cannabis Access. And certainly, give me a shout. You can reach us through that Facebook page. If you shout loud enough, you'll get a hold of us. We're a little busy, and we're a voluntary outfit, but we got vets that we work with all over the country and a few around the world, and it's pretty cool to be able to get involved and do this stuff. It's its own reward. I get to meet some pretty cool people like you and hang out, so I enjoy it.
Well, I have a goal in life, and that is to someday meet Dr. Meshulam, and I don't know that I'll ever be able to, but I hope to someday. I hope he comes to the United States again. I wish I could have seen him in Colorado last year.
I've hung out with him several times, and he's never really seemed very impressed with me.
Well, you got to be a stoner to like you. He's not a stoner.
Yeah, I guess. He just doesn't think much of me at all. My work, it's like I talk to him about stuff. I tried to give him an artifact to take home to Israel, and he didn't want to take it through customs.
Really? What was it?
A little corn medicine bottle or something like that.
Oh, like an old... well, look, he's got his reasons. And God, thank God for Dr. Meshulam. I don't know where we would be without him. And
Are you kidding? He's Dr. Mikaria and Dr. Meshulam. Between those two, that's the basis of a lot of our understanding in the work that I do.
Michael, happy holidays, and I wish a great 2018 for you. And we'll be talking to you next year. We'll hear some more great stuff. And thanks for your passion. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. Great to be with you, and look forward to touching base with you after the next series of meetings.
Thanks, buddy. We'll be right back after this.
Rested all against the sea to have a better life. Marie, you are the wild blue sky. Men do foolish things. You turn kings into beggars, beggars into kings. Pretend the answer. Can you forgive me somehow? Maybe when our story's over, we'll go where it's always spring. The band is playing our song again. All the world is green. Pretend green. summer brings. It's a love you'd kill for, and all the world is green. He's balancing a diamond on a blade of grass. The dew will settle on our graves when all the world is green. Pretend that you owe me nothing, and all the world is green. We can bring back the old days again, when all the world is green. He's balancing a diamond on a blade of grass. The dew will settle on our graves when all the world is green.
The medical marijuana. The medical marijuana. Radio. Radio. Show.
Thank you, Michael Krawitz. Make sure to check him out on Facebook. He's available if you need to ask him any questions. Veterans, he's certainly there to help you. I want to thank my two radio mentors, both with the initials HS. Thank you for your inspiration. If you want to be a guest on our show, if you're an activist, an advocate like Michael, if you have a website advocating for cannabis, if you're a patient, you have a story to tell, you have some products, write us at info@mmjradio.com. If you'd like to watch some of our old shows, you can go to medicalmarijuanaradio.com or mmjradio.com. My YouTube channel is LSLove88. Let's see, SoundCloud, it's MMJ Radio, and Spreaker, MMJ Radio, CannabisTube.net, we have a channel. On Spreaker and iHeartRadio, you can go to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network, and we're also available on on NowTV.com, channel 937.
The medical marijuana.
Shalom. Shalom.
And chaos where it needs to be. Oh yeah. And fuck Trump.